And we're live. Hello, everyone. Quick question for you. Have you ever felt like you finished a project, but yet somehow that client comes back with more later, or delaying the approvals, delaying that invoice? They're just somehow not in the same place you are, even though everything was done, or so you thought. If so, today's topic, how to know when a client project is officially done and get paid on time, is what we are after. Hey, everyone. My name is Acacia Thornton. I'm the CEO legal coach, longtime attorney and business advisor who is a public speaker, trainer, and I help business owners get their relationships with their customers in alignment in ways that increase their revenue. And this is the Aligned Business Series, where we go live 3 times a week talking about real client stories. And today you're going to hear 2 of them. And at the end, we always have a live Q&A for all of you. So make sure you find your chat buttons, and we will get to that momentarily. But let's first get to the how can you set yourself up for success when it comes to a client project being done. So let me tell you 2 quick stories. One is about a consulting company, longtime consulting company. They do things that are kind of both off the shelf, but also customized for some of their clients. And they had one of these clients who was really excited to work with them. They signed up for about a 2-3 month project because it was the first time this customer was ever going to be doing this. And they wanted to hire the best and have that hand holding to get this integrated. So they were really, really excited. And of course, my client, the consulting company, was like, we do this all day, every day. There's a reason we're the best. Happy to work with you. So as I went through each phase of these milestones, what started to happen is my client, the consulting company, would deliver their part of the work, and then all would be good. The client would be like, "Yep, this looks good. I love it. Let's do this." And then my client, the consulting company, would move on to starting the next level of work. Meanwhile, the customer is taking that last milestone and starting to integrate it, put it into their programs and working with their other teams. And they'd come back and be like, "Oh yeah, we all need this like move now, or we need this customized in this way now." Back to the other milestone that my client thought was done. We're like, "Hey, we're on to milestone 3 here, and you're trying to get things done back again for milestone 2. Thought we were done." Well, this keeps happening, this 2 steps forward, 2 steps back kind of a thing. And next thing you know, this project is on month 6. Month 6, supposed to be again a 2 to 3 month project. And my client comes to me like, "Acacia, we've got to get this done. What do we do? Because we did sign up to customize these things for them. We do have our SLW with the milestones, with the pricing, with the deliverables, but yet somehow we're not really able to get to done. How can we get to done?" And we'll get to that in a second. But then the other client that this kind of comes up with is when she runs a design company. She's been in business for over a decade. She's great at what she does, has some really big clients. And she had this client come along, and it was going to be a 6-month project. And they had their milestones along the way, and communication with the customer is going great. So she'd do her draft, of maybe the logo or the mock-ups, whatever she sends them. They have their call. He's like, "I love this. I love this. I love this. This is great. Let's move on to the next one." So each milestone was moving along beautifully, and the client was responding with, "Yes, yes, yes, I love it." And then, of course, she goes to finalize the package, put everything together. This is the big, big final deliverable after all these months of approvals and working together at each phase. And she delivers that to him, and he goes silent. Where is he? Like, is this approved? Is this not? And that's something that can happen at the end, right? You deliver something and you don't hear back. What does that mean? What does that mean? Does that mean that they liked it and they just are good? They don't need to follow up with you? Or is it that they're uncertain, busy, doing something else? Silence is a breeding ground for uncertainty. It's a breeding ground for delaying and dragging things out. And it's a breeding ground for not getting paid on time. And that's what ended up happening with her, is when she didn't hear the final approval, she just assumed all was good, sent the invoice, and the invoice went unpaid. And then she had to track him down, spend all this time and energy tracking him down. And then he finally is like, "I hated it. I'm not paying for this." And so she's spent 2 extra months trying to track him down, all this stuff. And she's like, "Well, you have revisions available to you that's included." And he's like, "No, I don't care for the revisions. I'm not going to utilize them. And then I've had a third client where very, very similar, delivered everything. Everything was great along the ways, all the milestones. They deliver the stuff. The client paid for that one. That one the client paid for. And so all was good, right? Good. Haven't heard from the client in a while. Well, the client comes back months later, later that year, and goes, okay, we're ready for our revisions now. And my client was like, wait a minute, you accepted this. You had to deliver. You haven't said anything in months. What do you mean? Like, you've paid for it, we're done. And they're like, no, no, no. Our contract says we have 3 rounds of revisions. We're ready for those revisions now. So one thing you can see across all 3 of these stories is that done was a moving target. And what I always like to ask my clients, and this is a question that is asked straight out in my Align Clients Paid with Purpose program, is when is the project done? When you say it is, or when your client says it is? Because here's the truth. If you can't define when exactly that date is done, or when your project is going to be closed, or what you need from the customer and that the customer doesn't need it, or know what you need from them, you really are leaving open a big limbo area in all of your projects. And this could be really, really harmful because limbo means you're not getting paid on time. It means that invoice can be delayed. They can ghost and delay the payment like my design client did, the second story I told you. If that's possible in your agreements, well, then they get to use limbo as a reason to not to pay you. Ghosting becomes their opportunity. If they can come back later and ask for those revisions like the third client did, then you leave yourself open to having to do work that you're not planned for, that you don't have the resources for. Maybe you're at full capacity. Maybe you took the month off and now they demand the revisions. What? You're not expecting this. And then with the client, the consulting story, they couldn't even get to done. They couldn't get to done. So here's 6 things that these really impacts your business. 1, you're inviting scope sprawl or scope creep. You're allowing the project to slowly bleed. And even if it's just the milestone early, right? Milestone 1 with that consulting client, going to the milestone 2, the delays started early. And the asks seem small. They seem simple from their customer. But every one of those yeses slowly dragged out, done. So just can we squeeze this into, oh, I had one more thing. Let's expand the timeline. All of these things, it invites your timelines to expand. It invites your energy and your experience and just your inner self, as well as your teams and your resources to become drained without getting any added value. You don't get more time. You still have to hit those deadlines. You don't get more payment, but you're working more. Which leads us to the second thing. You lose authority. When you keep saying yes to this silence, to this limbo, to the client gets to decide when it's done, not me, well, that drains your authority and your leadership in your business. It drains you saying, this is how I do business. This is a business, not a, parent-family relationship. And this is something that I see a lot of my clients who tend to overgive or say yes or don't want to do those boundaries. They feel a little insecure in holding them. Is that if you think about some of your biggest and favorite brands out there, those brands you're just a big fan of, I bet you they don't sit there saying, oh, we're going to lean in hoping you'll trust us. Or I'm going to give you a little bit more hoping you say yes. Or I'm going to overdo things and overgive and overdeliver and expand timelines. They probably have this is who we are. This is how we do business. This is how we deliver. We invite you to be part of this. If this is what you say yes to as a customer, then we want you as our customer. But this is who we are. This is how we do business. This is what we offer. And these are the boundaries. You probably energetically know what they are with your favorite brands. But a lot of small and medium business owners, they lean in more. They're still coming from the perspective of trying to fill or lean into maybe parental or like childhood things, that the need to feel fulfillment as opposed to leading a business that has a definition. And so this is why allowing these, when is the client project done? It slowly whittles this away. And then your clients instinctively and intuitively know they're in charge. They know that they can expect you to be available. They know that they can demand more of you. They know this instinctually, intuitively. It's not mentally or malicious or intentional. It's that they start to feel that they can get that. And so they continue to behave that way. And what this does is, well, your energy and your calendar become drained. Things that you thought you were done. Q1 should be closed, and yet here you are at the end of Q2 still doing other projects. Well, that means you can't get the next client in the door. And this happened with a consulting company. That's one of the main reasons they came to me, was they're like, we've had to say no to other business because we don't have the bandwidth until we're done with this project. And we had only planned and budgeted for this project lasting 2 to 3 months. Here we are on month 6. We're literally losing money, having to say no to money. We can't get another client in the door. We can't fill this gap, and we're not getting paid more from this client by doing all this extra work. Or we saw with the other clients, they can come back months later saying, okay, I'm ready for what you promised me. And you're like, no, your revisions happen within a reasonable amount of time after I've delivered it to you. You can't come back 2 years later. Well, this all adds up to you can't get your income. You lose income. You're losing your time. You're losing your energy. You're overexpending your resources and your team without any value back and without the ability to go get new clients and do something new, move forward. So you can't move forward. And if you can't move forward, you can't grow. Your bottom line is broken. It's disheveled and it's stuck in somebody else's hands, stuck in your client's hands. That whole question of who makes the decision. Is it when you say it's done, or is it when the client says it's done? And this is why having things written into your contracts are so important. So many clients think 2 things. One, well, I've got a client agreement. I have my template. It'll do the work for me. Well, a generic template or one that you've taken from a client or another business or something you got off of AI, it doesn't know how you want to do business. It can't represent you. It can't answer these questions about limbo, ghosting, dragging out timelines. How long does a person have to ask for those revisions or ask for samples or ask for modifications? Only you know that. So until you've put them in there, your contract remains silent. And as we saw, silence is what caused every one of these challenges and problems. Because where do you take the time to talk to your clients and put it into the agreement? Well, you've probably talked about, well, here's what I'm going to deliver to you. Here's the value and the pricing for it. And here's our timeline. Here's our milestones. Those things you talk to, because those things are part of what your client is buying. And that's what you need to have agreement to move forward. But as we saw in every one of these stories today, what about the parts that you don't know are coming? What about the parts that we don't always have to talk about? Hey, in the event that you decide to ghost me, that's not the conversations we have with our clients. But that doesn't mean those things can't impact your bottom line. So knowing when done is done, how do you know when it's done? Because the contract says it's done. The contract says it's done. That means you've agreed to those terms. That means your customer has agreed to those terms. Everyone's in agreement that this is when done is done. And that's why it's important to have it at the front top of your client agreements. And that's what the Aligned Clients Pay with Purpose program is it's filling these gaps for you. It's you deciding this is who I am when I do business. And then it gives you the literal copy paste. Put this right into your agreement. Put this right here. This is who you are and how you want to do business. Put this line right into your agreement. And you're going to get 3 sets of those across different things. And the first one, the acceptance clause, is exactly what would have solved all 3 of these problems today. An acceptance clause says, this is when we are done. This is when we're done. No matter your ghosting, no matter your questions, no matter your follow-ups and your revisions, no matter the timeline and the milestones we've agreed to, this is when done is done. And that's called an acceptance clause. And how you're going to write that acceptance clause or have that is, of course, going to be varied on your business model and the way you do business. Your competitors might have a completely different acceptance clause than you. This gets to be yours. When do you want done to be done? And when do you want and how do you want to communicate that to your customers to where everyone's in agreement early on, no matter the ghosting, no matter the timelines, no matter the questions, no matter the revisions and everything. This simple sentence is going to empower you because it's right there at the beginning. Everyone's agreed to it. And now all you have to do is remind them it's there. Don't forget, we have this line in our agreement. This says when done is done. I want to give you that friendly heads up, customer, so that way, in case you wanted to do anything before that, this is your space and your time and how you're going to do that. That's the other thing about the acceptance clause. Is this going to clarify all of that in one easy sentence? I love it. All right, I already see some questions coming to the chat. So let me get over that. If you have any others, go ahead and get them in there. But let's see what we have. What do you do when you're in the middle of a project and the client stops paying and asks you to keep working for free? Hey, I mean, this is a great question because this one happens a lot. It's a little similar to the consulting one, right? Where they're in the middle of the project. And well, if you have good payment terms in your contract, what it'll do is one, say, this is the payment process. And if you don't pay, I have the right to stop. I have the right to stop because why should you continue to give value if they're not giving value back to you? But also, we want to clarify what's great about an acceptance clause is that it's not just the whole project being done, but you could use it at every single milestone or every single phase. So you can have one, hey, after deliverable 1, this is when we're done with this. And what is really potent and powerful about an acceptance clause and the why we use the word acceptance, it comes from legal stuff. But the reason we use the word acceptance is that what you've delivered has been officially accepted by them, meaning they are now legally required to pay. It has that auto trigger. Delivery, this situation automatically triggers acceptance and payment due legally. So it's another reason why we might want to have an acceptance clause at every milestone or at every phase along the way, is that you want to set that up for success. Hey, this part's done. Payment is now due for this. And it's legally binding, legally agreed to, even though it's in customer service type language. And so you know that you don't have to go on to phase 2 or finish phase 2 until they finish paying for phase 1, because you have that acceptance clause defining and triggering that situation for you. So that is a great question. That's another way that these acceptance clauses come into play, is they legally trigger payment. Yeah, love it. Great question. Let's see what other questions we have. How do I define done if I have an intangible? What are you? Oh, you're in coaching. You're in coaching. Okay. So done, think of what it is that you are looking to give in your value exchange here. Usually coaches, a lot of my coaching clients, it's appointments. Sometimes it might include worksheets or a process. But then when the process is done, it's done. Some clients, one way to look at done, and the Aligned Clients Paid with Purpose program walks you through this, is there's what you think you have to deliver, what you've promised, right? Like my consulting client, this is what we said we would deliver. But their client wanted that handholding. They thought they had paid for every little bit of handholding, every little bit of customization, and to where they felt totally, warm fuzzies and secures and had implemented it, and the implementation was successful. But the consulting company was like, we didn't promise that you'd have all these other layers. We simply promised these deliverables on these timelines customized to this level. And it's the same with coaching or any intangible. You're not always promising a particular outcome. So clarifying that done does not mean that outcome. Maybe you've created some marketing materials for them and you deliver that and they're like, okay, well, we're not going to pay you or say we're done. We might want our revisions until we know that this is going to work. It's like, well, I didn't promise the advertising I made you would deliver you, 20 new sales. I promised you designing something that met your qualifications. So another reason we want to look at done as what do you think you're delivering? But what might the client be after? What might the client do to shift? Oh, well, the reason I was coming to you for this design or for these coaching calls was to have this outcome. So clarifying that done does not mean that outcome. That done means I've done my part. So another reason the acceptance clause can be really, really big is looking at what do you deliver versus what might their end game, their full picture look like here. So yeah, you can definitely, acceptance clauses apply to every single product or service. If you're on Etsy and you send them something, well, do they have so much time to decide, hey, it arrived damaged, or hey, I don't like it? That would be a physical product. Services we've talked about, deliver, right? So acceptance clauses apply to all business models, no matter what it is you sell or give. Let's see what else we got. What's the best way to handle a client who comes back weeks later asking for revisions? This is one of those things that earlier you are able to confirm and clarify agreement, right? Why we want things in the client agreement itself is that we have something to support and help our position. Because there was that client I had that delivered everything, and then the client comes back. I mean, it was like 4 or 6 months later. It was way later in the year, and they're like, we're ready for our revisions. And she's like, but you've already had the product this whole time. You've even paid for it. And so what ended up happening there, her contract said you get 2 revisions. Like, okay, so the client did this. So what I like to help, if you don't have it clarified in your agreements yet, first, please go back and update your templates so that moving forward, you won't worry about this. But should it happen, what I recommend doing is now communicating the boundary while leaning into your customer's ask. Because what's nice is even though a customer might be over asking, they did come to you with that ask. And that's a beautiful thing. They still trust you. They still want you to be their source of answers. And we want that. We want that to be their go-to. But what we don't want is it to be endless without a value exchange back. So what I would do is like, okay, happy to do this, but just let you know, we usually only do the revisions in the first 30 days after delivery. So because we're extended beyond the normal timeline here, I want to make sure you have everything you want or need. So let me know so we can get this wrapped up. And that way, dear client, and I love this, throw in a way this adds value for them. So dear client, you have everything you need with your logo, with your consulting package, with your coaching, whatever it is, that you feel complete and that you're able to move forward with your next phase of the business. And so it helps them kind of try to front load or bring everything that might be lingering in the back of their minds forward to you now. And say, okay, so after this, we'll make the exception. We'll do this one because it was technically in your agreement that left this open. But we want to close the loop here. Let's close this loop. What can we do to close that loop together? Is how I would recommend doing that. And then update your templates so it's never there again. What if I feel bad saying no when they ask for one more thing? I would look at this in 2 ways. If we're feeling bad about saying no, to realize that's not the client. That's not them. That's you as the business owner. Why do you feel bad saying no? Why do you feel bad holding to the original agreement? Because that original agreement isn't just what they get from you, but what you promised to give. So why do you feel that no is an awkward or a weird place for you internally? Because you and the client agreed, and now you're the one who feels weird holding that space. The other thing I call out to some of my clients is, why is it that as we've been working with the client, we start to diminish our value of our time and our resources? In the beginning, you might have planned it out. Okay, well, this is probably going to take me about 10 hours of work. I bill my time at $250 an hour. That's a $2,500 project. But then suddenly on the back end of that project, we're like, oh, okay, well, I can give them a couple extra hours for not much more, just $25 more. Why is it that at the start of the project, your time is worth $250 an hour, but at the end of the project, your time is free or low cost? That's you holding that space and not staying consistent with your value. So I would explore that a little bit because it's not your client saying, hey, I want you to feel unworthy, or hey, I want you to overgive. It's your choice. You're choosing it there. That's happening there. And so I would explore that a little bit. What's going on there? All right, we'll take two more because we are definitely over time, but I'm loving your questions today because I'm loving this. Is this the same as scope creep clause, or do I need both? Oh, somebody knows what a scope creep clause is. I love this. I love this. Okay. Is it the same as scope creep clause, or do I need both? So an acceptance clause, what we've been talking about today, defining when done is done and automatically triggering payment obligations. That is different than a scope creep clause. A scope creep clause is where the scope of the work, the scope of those timelines, the scope of what you've defined, the scope of the time and services and values you're giving here starts to slowly extend. It creeps just a little bit by little. Oh, that's a small ask. I'll extend. Or, oh, it's just another week. We can do that. And what happens is those little scope creeps, they start to build up. And next thing you know, a 3-month project is a 6-month project, or a 10-hour project is a 20-hour project. So scope creep clarifies the value exchange that happens. It says, this is where the boundary is, and here's the value exchange when we cross it. That it helps your clients make informed decisions. Hey, if I'm going to need 2 extra calls, this is the value exchange that happens there. Is that worth it to me? Is it not? That's a little bit different than done is done, because done is you've delivered your part. So there's you've delivered your part. Payment is now due, and the client can't go drag things out or keep asking for things later on. Slightly different than, hey, we've hit the boundary. Here's the value exchange if you go beyond it. A great contract uses both of them. And in fact, the consulting story I told you at the top of our call today, that is actually what we did, is we combined a scope creep with an acceptance clause because both were happening there. It's not that we want to say, well, done is done, you don't get any more, client. We want them to continue coming to us, but we want to get our fair value exchange for that. You're giving them 5 extra hours. What's the value exchange for that? And that's where the scope creep clause comes in. So acceptance is when is done, done, no matter if there's follow-up, ghosting, delays, anything. Done is done. Payment is now triggered. Scope creep says this is the boundaries of what will be delivered. And here's what happens for the value exchange if you go beyond that. So great relationships have both. Have both of them in there. And the Aligned Clients Put with Purpose program has both. Module 1 is the acceptance clauses, giving you all of that. And then module 2 is scope creep. It gives you that, walks you through that, tells you stories, and then gives you the copy paste language to put those right into your agreements. So that is a great ending there. I love that. Thank you all for being here today. Thursday, we are going live with the contract clause that clients love to change, but how saying yes to it could cost you thousands. I will see you all there. This has been Acacia, the CEO Legal Coach. Have a beautiful one.